Howdy, y'all. It's Nicole Cuts here, and thank you for joining my YouTube live series. This is episode 4 out of 5 of the Trials, Tribulations, and Triumphs of the Heroine's Quest. Our next session is going to be the last, which happens to fall on Ash Wednesday, if you celebrate that. Next Wednesday evening. Don't know what we're going to talk about then, but thank you for joining this right here. Typically what I've been talking about is stuff that comes up during the weeks or days prior to this series or this installment, because this is real life, right? And what I'm talking about are things that I experience and that I know other folks experience as they are on the quest to living their vision of success. And as I say on my website, which is visionquestretreats.com, the heroine's journey is not for the faint of heart. You can look back and see your life in retrospect as having been on a journey, or you can heed the call to adventure and actually embark on the heroine's quest to living your vision of success, which is what I have chosen to do and what I try to help and what I do help other women to do, and sometimes some men, although my focus, do you like my little guy? Although my focus is on helping women to clarify and achieve their visions of success for their life's work, okay? So that's my vision, that's my passion, and that encompasses my mission as well. So while I say I've chosen and I've heeded the call to adventure to embark on the heroine's quest, I kind of feel like my vision chose me. Like, yes, I went on a quest to find it, but, and if you ever want to read my paper I did called The Vision Realization Continuum, it talks about how our higher power acts as a cosmic matchmaker to put us together with our vision of success, which is also our mission while we're here on Earth. And a lot of people are looking for a purpose. A lot of people are saying, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? And I feel badly for people who don't know what it is they're supposed to be doing. And I like to help people to figure that out. And it's not important to everybody, but to those that it is important to and who haven't done it, I know that it can be a very uncomfortable place to be. I went on my quest as I was ending the end of my graduate program to become a clinical psychologist, which is what I had been passionate about for a very long time. Then I fell out of love with that. And so I went on my own quest. I embarked on my own quest. Now, it wasn't painful or uncomfortable to me to realize that that change was afoot. I just felt the urge and I went on the quest, but it was also about where I was in my life. You know, for some people, they're not just finishing their, graduate degree and they're, 27, 28 years old. Some people don't come to this until they're older. Some people come to it younger. Some people never have to go on a quest. They just know, right? But to me, it was an adventure. And I learned a lot along the way. And it's kind of a parallel process, because while I was learning what I was learning to get to my vision of success, which is to helping women clarify and achieve their visions of success, I learned these things to share, which just makes total sense when you look at the heroine's quest and the fact that after the major ordeal that you return to your people with the elixir. And I tell people all the time, your story can be your elixir. So we won't go into that, but, I know what I started to say. If you want to, did I say anything that sounded remotely like Alexa just now? She just said, good night, sleep tight. What did I possibly say to her? Okay, I know I should probably turn Alexa off so she's not eavesdropping or, funneling information someplace, but I mean, it's useful for me to just call out and say, can't say her name. What's the weather? What's the time? What's the temperature outside? How much is whatever times whatever. But I don't like it when she just chimes in unbidden, like I didn't ask you anything. Okay, we'll have to talk about this later. All right, That's me and Alexa. But what I was saying is if you go to my blog on the visionquestretreats.com, just visionquestretreats.com, you click on blog. If you look for how to write your own heroine's quest, which you might want to take, it's a online course. It's free. It's like this, has video installments, but a lot of text, taking you through the steps. But the first part of it, the suggested pre-work part, has within it the paper I just mentioned, the Vision Realization Continuum. It also explains more about the heroine's quest and has other resources, including my books, in case you don't know about them. The Adventures of Isabel, books 1 and 2. Book 1 is The Embryo Goddess and the Morpho. Book 2 is Journey to Orphalese, and that's the most recent one that I just published in August. So my whole thing is about the heroine's quest, okay? But along the road of the quest, there are trials and tribulations. There's even a road of trials. There are the ordeals. There's dragons. There's all kind of things. So this series has been dedicated to talking about those. I thought maybe this week, it's time for a triumph. And I have had many triumphs. But, I thought about it. People don't usually have problems with the triumphs. They have more of a challenge with the trials. Although I do want to mention something that I did this week that was a lot of fun. I spoke for a friend of mine. She has a program for women leaders, and it's the Lead Her Academy. And so this was her first cohort that she had of all African American women. It's going to be one of 4 cohorts, and she asked me to come and talk about self-care and leadership. Well, self-care is my other big thing. Well-being is very important to me. And I always say that self-care equals self-love. And, you really can't do anything. Well, you can't do anything comfortably without loving yourself. Okay, you can do whatever, but, it's an inside-out job. It's not outside in. So at least in my mind, what's the point if you're not happy and if you don't love yourself? Okay. So she asked me to talk about self-care and leadership. And I thought, yes, I want to talk about that. But at the same time, we all know we're supposed to engage in self-care. We all know what that looks like, what it can look like, right? So I decided instead to talk about the union between self-care and leadership. And I went into that through somatic coaching, and somatic coaching techniques, which is something that I use in my practice, which has to do with being embodied, basically, being aware of, paying attention to your body, getting information from it about where you are, how you feel, how you're doing, and managing that, which is just like the first 2 parts of emotional intelligence, right? Self-awareness and self-management. But first you have to be aware. And where do you get these awarenesses? Well, you don't just get them, purely through cognition. I mean, our cognition is connected to all of the, neurons and everything in our body, all the electricity that's running through it. So you can't really be here without this anyway, is my thing. I did a little series called, or videos, Bring Your Body to Work Day, because a lot of people don't bring their bodies to work. They don't bring them to their lives. They just show up. They're like a head and some arms. It's like, how are you living? How many tangents is that I've gone on now? But anyway, I had a great time speaking to this group of women on Tuesday about the union between self-care and leadership. And I'm not going to go all into that, but I would call that a triumph because it was me living my vision of success and really enjoying it, which is what I aim to do and what I get when I do the work of Vision Quest retreats like I'm doing right now. And the things that I do that are Vision Quest retreats, living my vision thing, I put them in my calendar as pink, okay? Because pink is my favorite color. It's also the color of the heart. It also reminds me of the pink bubble technique from creative visualization. So pink, 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 pink means heart, fun, love for me. Hold on one second. Somebody's texting me. Okay. So I texted 20 people today. That's not who's texting me back because, that's how it goes. Plus a lot of people have been popping up all over the place, but that's probably a good thing. I don't know what they want. What does any of this have to do with rejection? Nothing. This was leading up to talking about rejection. Oh, by the way, speaking of rejection, I don't know if anybody's even on here. I don't know if anybody's paying attention. And that's kind of a good way into talking about the potential rejection when you are putting yourself out there to live your vision of success. Now, I'm not saying nobody is out there live right now, because they might be. You might be there. If you are there, say something. Just say like hi or something, because see, I'm going to say hello, because unlike Facebook Live, okay, I do see that Andrea is there. Thank you. Yes, we're here. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know you're there. And this is the thing. It's like sometimes I can feel, and I know other people too, there's two things with rejection, okay? There is the feeling we get, the fear of it, why we don't maybe put ourselves out there, which could be picking up the phone and calling somebody for a meeting. It could be going to a networking thing. It could be inquiring about a job. There's so many things that we have to do when we are on the quest to live our vision of success. And even if we are living it, even within that, there are still always things that have this potential of rejection. Okay. Now, some people are more sensitive to it than others. I happen to be kind of sensitive, right? And I don't mean that I, crumble or that I won't do it, because my thing is, being afraid is not a good reason to not do something, as long as it's just the fear, like in your mind. You know what I mean? I think it's a good idea. Hey, Maria, thanks for coming. Fear is there for a reason. So if it's really about life saving, that's one thing. But the problem is that our brain doesn't necessarily, or the primitive part of our brain really doesn't distinguish between what's a real fear and what's manufactured by ourselves. Hey, Maxine, thanks for coming. So it feels like a real fear a lot of times. So my thing is, if the only thing stopping me from doing something is that I'm afraid, and it's not afraid for my physical well-being, and even if I am, a lot of times I'll do it anyway, but you know what I'm saying? That's not a good reason. But that doesn't mean I don't feel the fear. It doesn't mean I don't feel the ouch when I get rejected. And Maria Olson, who's on here, she and I have talked about this. She's an author, she's an attorney, she's a lot of different things. Maria, you can put a link. As a matter of fact, everybody, please put a link to your business if you would like other people to check you out. Oh, you just texted me, Maria. You say, thank you, Maria. And Maria was, she and I were talking one time. By the way, we have had a couple of writers' retreats together. And I mentioned she's an author, but she's an author of many different books. Anyway, I remember talking to her about, feeling shy or tired or hurt, whatever it was, with the putting myself out there. And she helped me by saying, well, isn't that just kind of part of the game, So like the not taking it personally thing, and that has helped me a lot. And I always have to remember the not taking it personal part, right? Because I can be like really sensitive and it can be kind of tiring, And when I say take it personally, I really don't mean that I think that the people are out to get me or mean. I just mean that it can be painful. But what part is painful is really the ego part. It's also not real. It's not real. And the thing that helps me when I have this fear is to know that it's really not about me anyway. So I still have to go through. So that's one thing that helps me. So I was saying there's the fear of rejection in two ways. There's like stopping here and not doing it, and I'm afraid, or there's the you do put yourself out there and something does happen, like somebody says no, and then what do? Right? What did Maria? Oh, thank you, Maria. Yeah, and that's something Maria is really good at. Now, I don't know, Maria, you can tell us if you're actually really sensitive to the no's, but Maria will put herself out there. She will ask, she will go. I'm like, I can handle about 3 rejections a day, and then I got to go to bed. But so I'll move at a slower pace, but I'm going to ask. I'm still going to pick up the phone. I'm still going to send the email, but I kind of have my quota for the day. But this really came up for me last week, I guess, because I was talking to a client and we were talking about her fear of rejection. And one of the things that we got to, and I'm being cautious because I don't want to out anybody, but what we got to, I think this is probably very universal, so I don't think it's going to out anybody, was the little girl part of her. That was the part that was afraid to put herself out there because of this fear of rejection. And the thing is with these fears is that it doesn't have to be based on any real experience. It can be the fear of having an experience from when you're little, or it can be real rejection, but it doesn't have to have ever happened for that to be a fear. But what we identified was that it was really that part of her that was so afraid of being rejected, right? And I think that a lot of us can relate to that. I don't think I'm alone in that. No means I have not given you enough information to say yes, smile. I think that's what they teach you in sales, isn't it? See, if you're trained in sales, then they will tell you, you've got to ask this many times and you're going to get this many no's and you sort of become like a Marine in getting rejection. Yes, I know. But I'm constantly having to sell, and I'm not saying but to denigrate, because what you said is very true. And I should say, and I wasn't trained as a salesperson. I was trained as a clinician. And then I learned how and had additional training to become an organizational consultant. But, they don't teach you in school about the selling yourself, selling what you're doing, getting opportunities and all that. So I've had to learn a lot of things on my own, right? Which is not a bad thing. I don't mean it to sound bad, because actually I find it very exciting to learn new things and have to do new things and do difficult things, which is one of the reasons why I'm an entrepreneur, because I don't want to do the same thing all the time. But it doesn't mean that it's not difficult, right? So back to the little girl. So you might be listening to this and you have that little girl part of you that is scared of getting rejected or has other fears or whatever, right? And you can holler if you do, you don't have to if you don't want to. And if you're a man, then maybe you have a little boy. You may not have a little girl too. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that part of you is valid and legitimate. The only thing that you have to get in touch with, because I have a little girl definitely too. I have 5 distinct parts that I can name, but I won't get into right now. But it's about who's supposed to be running the show at that particular moment. Okay. And if my friend Dr. Sharnubi was on here, she does a lot of work with parts, and they have special names for parts. I just have names for mine because I just know what they are. But the idea is, don't let that part of you run the show at the wrong time, right? So that's what we got to with this client was, it's okay to have the little girl and to take care of her and honor her, but then that's also the time you need to call on that adult part of you to like, what does the adult need to say to that little girl part to say, we got this, right? So, okay, I'll tell my little, that's Nikki, right? Nikki wants to play. She's a little baby, all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to, she doesn't know they're going to hurt my feelings. Okay, that's okay. But I've got a lot of adults in here too. We got Nicole, we got Rona, we got Nick, we're all adults, okay, with our own personality. There's another Nikki too, but she doesn't go to work. But those parts of you and there are always going to be parts of you that are not afraid and that don't fear rejection. So you got to call on those parts to say, okay, little, Andrea, Maria, Maxine, little whoever, we got this, right? And inhabit that part of yourself. But it doesn't mean, and this is all a part of that self-care and the integration thing too, it doesn't mean forget about that other part. You also have to listen to what do they need. Maybe they just need to be heard, to be assured, okay, we're not going to do something foolish or, whatever it is. I don't know. So that was one experience I had that brought this up for me and made me think about that little girl part. that could be afraid of rejection. And then what do you do with it? And then the other thing is, I heard this TED talk on Sunday, right maybe a day after I'd had this conversation with this client. And this guy, he's from China, and he wrote a book. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to put it up later. But what he did was he became an expert on getting rejected. Okay. And it was probably not a coincidence that his fear of rejection had started when he was 6 and was in a class, and the teacher had everybody give each other compliments, and then they got a present, and that, get your present, come stand over here. And he was one of only 4 people who didn't get a compliment or get called to get a gift. And of course, he was mortified. And, at 6, that can be pretty wounding. Okay. So little dude got wounded then, but then he bounced back like around 14. I'm not saying he was depressed all the way till 14, but at 14, he said that, and I'll put the link so you can hear it directly from him. Some very famous, successful person, might have been Bill Gates, came to their school, and then he was inspired. He's going to be a businessman and all this kind of stuff. But then he didn't realize his dreams. He tried, he failed, and he let that, put him back. And right before he was getting ready to have a child, he got married, he was getting ready to have a child, and his wife said, what happened to all these dreams? Anyway, he realized that what had happened was that his fear of rejection had stopped him from going for basically, his vision of success. Rejection of love is a different animal. It is, but it isn't. And feel free to say more, Andrea, but I will address that in a minute. I'm dusting off my screen. So anyway, what dude did was he made a decision. What he did was his own exposure therapy / implosion therapy, because what he did was he set out to get rejected on purpose every day for 100 days. Okay. And he started off asking a stranger to borrow money. The guy told him no. He was mortified. He ran away. But then he realized, like, wow, I just ran away. Like, that was his little boy part. And so he did this through this implosion therapy, where he just kept asking until he got braver and used to it and inured to it. Like Andrea is probably saying, when you train for that, he trained himself, and the funny thing is, and he didn't necessarily mention this, but the radio host did, because this was on TED Radio Hour, and then I went and heard the whole talk, that he actually got yes, like 50% of the time, he actually got yeses. So, that fear, we know this intellectually, right? Like, I'm not saying this like you all don't know this intellectually, but I think if you have a fear of rejection, it's about really sort of stepping back and taking a look at it. What does it mean to you if somebody says no? What most likely irrational feelings and fears are attached with that, right? And what part of you is it that's so afraid of rejection? And also to ask yourself, what are you willing to do because of that fear? So if you can articulate, if somebody said to you, why are you not applying for that program or that class or whatever, or to speak at something, why are you not putting yourself out there? Well, I'm afraid, or da-da-da. Or even if it's just in your own head, or even if this is just something you realize that's holding you back. If you're willing to articulate that I am actually willing to not live my vision of success so that I can preserve this fear, if you can really articulate that, fine. But I think if you really say that out loud, you'd realize you're not willing, right? It's like, am I willing to not realize my vision of success in order to avoid this potential rejection? That's just doesn't make any sense, right? And not to mention, just like the guy with the TED Talk thing, it takes practice, right? I remember when I first started, running my own business and, having to ask for money and, not I didn't cold call, but, taking meetings with people and all those kind of things. And it was really uncomfortable, right? But over time, I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it. As a matter of fact, I almost have no discomfort with it, but it's time. It's like building up that practice. I do want to address AEW Financial Partners LLC's statement that rejection of love is a different animal. I would say it is and it isn't, because either way, now love might feel more personal or more tender, and therefore maybe you have more of a fear, maybe you have less. I don't know. Some people, it depends on what you value more, right? Depends on your personality, your temperament, and all of that. But typically we think about being rejected in love as more painful, I guess. But it's still coming from the fear, still comes from the same place, to me anyway. It comes from either that, little child part in you, or it comes from, again, that ego part. And the other thing I think that's connected to our fear of no's in a way is a fear of failure, right? Because if we get told no, then we won't be succeeding at this thing, whether it's love or whether it's career or whether it's whatever. And to me, I'm just speaking for me now, when I'm in that place, I'm thinking I'm in charge somehow. So it's back to the ego. It's back to a lack of humility, because that's me saying this is supposed to be this way. I am supposed to get this. I need this thing, is a lack of faith for me in my higher power that actually I will get what I need, what I truly need, for two things. One, to learn what it is that I need to learn while I'm here on earth in this spiritual school, which is my belief. And two, I will get what I need to fulfill my mission here on earth, as long as it is in alignment with what my higher power wants for me. It's only me, it's only my ego and desire to be in control that tells me a situation is not as it should be. So I think in both cases, that fear is still connected to my ego, and our egos are not, they're not there to advance us spiritually. The ego is like a threshold guardian that wants to stay. We can't deal with it. We can't stand this. We will die if this happens. It's the ego is afraid to be killed. The ego is afraid that it will die. But in many cases, and I'm not trying to say this to be dramatic, but in many cases, it does have to die for you to actually live. So and maybe you've said, I'm a too fat, skinny, etc. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, AEW, but at the same time, you can project all kind of things on rejection, right? Oh, they didn't hire me because they don't think my work is up to snuff, or they didn't hire me because they think I'm too fat or too skinny, or same thing, he or she doesn't love me or doesn't like me because I'm not pretty enough, skinny enough, whatever enough. And that's where we come back to that self-love thing, right? Because that's giving somebody else the power to determine whether or not we are worthy or enough, and so if you feel that way, to me, and this is not a ding because I've definitely been there, could easily be there, at any point, except for that I'm not, hankering after anybody right now. But, it's another opportunity really to go to that little child part and say, what is it that you need? What are you missing? Because somebody else, people all have different opinions, right? So how can I tie my worth to a variety of opinions? I mean, I'm going to take something as seemingly superficial as my hair. because I've often done different things with my hair, from cutting it bald to having dreadlocks to bleaching it white to bleaching it making it other colors. Hey, Joan Russell, thanks for joining. I have people tell me what hairstyles they don't like, and they do this in this very gentle way, as if, this is the first time I'm hearing this. And that's nice. That's nice of them, or they'll say which one they really do like, to kind of let me know they don't like this other one. And since this has been my hair, and since I've been dealing with this for a long time, and I say dealing with like these feedback from people, it's funny because it's like, you love this hairstyle, you love this hairstyle, you hate this one, you hate that one. It's like, you can't please everybody. So if my self-worth is tied to how cute you think I am on any given day, then I'm a slave. I'm emotionally enslaved to your opinion at the moment. And that's a good point, actually, AEW. I'm changing it to yours since you didn't actually have your real name. I figured I should be a little more discreet, but that's a really good point, because again, that's like that, I don't know. It's still the ego, it's still the ego saying, I have, the ego is like our small self, but our higher selves, our more evolved selves, I don't think they really care so much about that stuff, So I would, if I'm thinking, am I too fat? Am I too skinny? Whatever, then that's between me and me. I got to look at that and say, how much am I accepting myself exactly as I am right now? How much do I love myself, whether I'm chubby or skinny? And like right now, I don't know if you all know, but I've been embarking on this 30-day challenge. For the winter, I've been in hibernation, semi-hibernation. I've been on hibernation light. And the reason why was really twofold. Self-care, one, because I don't have as much energy in the winter, a slowdown, all that. So just kind of honoring how I felt, but also using this time to kind of go inside and gather some energy, and make plans for when I emerge from hibernation. And that's why I decided to have the Spring Breakthrough Beach Retreat for women, which is March 22nd to the 24th in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, at the Belmore Inn and Spa. If you are not already registered, we still do have spaces. I don't want to have a lot of people because I want it to be intimate, but we do still have some spaces, and you can find that information on my website. Oh, and also if you are a follower of my page or this or anything, my newsletter or anything, you can get a 10% discount. So if you haven't already gotten that link for that and you're interested and you'd like that discount, just shoot me a note and I will get that to you. Joan Russell says, I need to take time for more self-care, slow process to start. Thank you for sharing that, Joan. Yeah, that's also what that weekend is about, because it's about going away to step back, take some time, look at where you are with your vision of success, work on clarifying it and coming back with a plan, but at the same time, getting some rest. There's spa treatments, things like that, so that we can come back with that renewed energy. Joan Russell, if you're not caring for yourself, you need to just call me. It doesn't have to be a slow process. You can start with something small, right? I always tell people, like, the first step is to pay attention. And this is why I'm a big believer in the somatic coaching. It's like paying attention to your body and what your body is telling you it needs. Does it need rest? Does it need to be eating better? Does it need to be moving more? And then you just follow that instinct. It doesn't have to be, it will be overwhelming if you say, I need to exercise more, therefore I'm going to join a gym and I'm going to work out, whatever. That can be overwhelming. But all of the above, which ones, John? I forgot what I said. You just remind me what I say. Okay, you'll remind me in a minute. My point is that you can start small and pay attention to the little things, right? If your body is like, I need to get up and move, you can get up right then and move it. I'm feeling tight. I need to put my shoulders back and down and take a nice deep breath. I mean, that's the basic unit of getting back to yourself and to caring for yourself, is to breathe, right? So if you feel like you don't have time for the gym, you don't have to, you always have time to stop and take a breath. And I would venture to say you probably have some time for like a walk, some stretching. We have these moments that we fritter away doing other things, and we need to look at them sort of objectively and like, is this really caring for myself, or is this just mindless time I'm frittering away? Or is eating this Five Guys burgers and fries, really giving me a reward at the end of a hard day? Or is it me just eating emotionally so that I, sort of zone out? Well, for me, typically it's the second one if I'm eating Five Guys burgers and fries. AEW said, is it healthy to be too immune to rejection where you're coming off as overconfident? I don't know what overconfident is. That's a good question. No, I don't think you can be too immune to rejection. My thing is, as long as it's authentic and coming from a real place, and that if it's not put on, then that's you being you. I don't know what overconfident is. I mean, I know what arrogant is, or I know what, that's the only thing I can think of that people might equate with being overly, I don't know, what is overly. So one of the competencies of being emotionally intelligent is self-confidence, okay? And it's in the self-awareness quadrant of emotional intelligence. Self-confidence means that you are confident in your own worth, right? It doesn't mean you think you can do any and everything under the sun, and it doesn't mean you don't know that you have limitations. It means that you're okay with those limitations. They don't make you feel badly about yourself. Self-confidence also means you have the confidence that you can learn to do something if you don't already know how to do it, right? So that's what it doesn't, it's not a lack of humility. Self-confidence actually is intertwined with humility because it's an honest assessment of who you are and a true acceptance of who you are. So I don't know if it's false confidence, I guess that could be wrong. But if it's real, it's real. Now, do other people sometimes react negatively to a person? And I've, honestly, especially a woman who is just confident and secure and comfortable and assertive, do other people sometimes react negatively? Absolutely. I get that a lot. That's almost like a lot of times I think people might feel more comfortable if you shrink. But I mean, I don't even know what to say except for welcome. I mean, like, I don't have time for them. I don't have time for that. As long as I'm treating people kindly and with respect, I'm not going to, it's like that Marianne Williamson poem about light. It's like, it's not enlightened to shrink so that other people feel good. Our job is to let our own light shine. And through that, we unconsciously, or maybe consciously, give other people permission to do the same. So I would say, I've never seen anybody in danger of being overly Now, if somebody's not emotionally intelligent and in tune with themselves, they might have a false picture of themselves, which really means they have huge blind spots. But I wouldn't call that being necessarily overconfident. I would call that having huge blind spots and not really knowing yourself that well. But if your confidence is coming from a true knowing of yourself and your worth and your abilities, then no, I don't think you can be too confident. But you guys, feel free to chime in. Maybe different people think differently. That's just my take on that. Trying to think, was there anything else I wanted to say about the fear of rejection? Oh, I know what I wanted to say. Back to the parts thing, back to like the little girl part and the other parts of us. And, like I said, in parts theory of psychology, they name these parts different things. Like there's a firefighter, there's this, I don't know that. You have to ask my friend Sana about that. But you don't want to reject, speaking of rejecting, any of any of your parts. Self-rejection is also something that can happen, that's real, right? I don't like this part of me, so I'm going to reject it, which would then become like an exiled part of you. That's not healthy, okay? So the idea would be to know that part, honor that part, bring them in again for that integration. But, if I'm busy saying, and this is again back to my favorite, the 4 agreements. I find them very helpful and can be very helpful in this dealing with rejection thing. Always be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make any assumptions, and always do your best. Nothing more and nothing less. Okay. Now, how the 4th one, always do your best, relates to this is what it would mean is I just show up and I do my best. If I need to pick up the phone, make that call, send the email, show up and talk, whatever it is, I can only do my best. And sometimes it's going to be amazing and sometimes it's going to be a little less than amazing. But the idea with the always do your best is you're not really, once you've done your best, that's it. You forget about the rest of it, right? So that's very helpful in terms of that. And along with that, again, I'm going to say that ego thing, because anytime I'm afraid of, and rejection doesn't have to just mean a no, by the way. Rejection can also come in the form of not being, somebody not thinking that something was great or they don't like what you're saying. That's rejection, right, as well. Thank you, Joan. When she said your take makes sense. So like, let's say I'm showing up to do something like you facilitate a group or speak or something like that, and I'm having anxiety, which I don't have a lot of typically, but if I am having anxiety, it's always because I'm in my ego. It's always because of my personal egotistical desire to be great. It's really not for anything else. That's just me. So what I do if I'm feeling that way and having that fear is I go, oh, but no, it's not about you. Why are you here? What are you here to do? And it's always to help somebody. So I have to change the focus to that. And that gets me out of that fear, right? So just show up and do your best. That's the 4th agreement. The 1st agreement, always be impeccable with your word. No, it's be impeccable with your word, not always. Be impeccable with your word includes self-talk, okay? So, and it doesn't have to be out loud, it could just be in your head. So if you're using rejecting or harsh or judgmental self-talk, that's another form of rejection. But it's the type of rejection that can actually damage your self-esteem when it's coming from within you. Not to say that other people's constant criticism or rejection cannot be damaging, because it can be, especially if it happens to a child from adult or somebody that you're in a relationship with long-term, like an abusive relationship. Yeah, it really can affect your self-esteem. But the thing to do would be to, if you're an adult and you get out of there before you let that happen, because that really will happen. But what I'm talking about is the self-rejection now. Do you reject your weaknesses? Do you reject your true self? Anything like that is going to make you not whole. I say disintegrate you, which is true, disintegrate, right? So instead of being integrated, you'd be fractured. And that's not strong. And that's not whole and doesn't feel well. Doesn't feel good. You would not feel well. Hey, Kim, thank you for joining. Ego should always be checked at the door. Thank you, Kim. You're right. And I know in the 12-step tradition, we say your ego is not your amigo because it's not, right? But it will masquerade as your friend, you know, and will feel real, but it's really not real. So, you can remember that. So if I'm gonna, what I'd like to leave you all with tonight, as I prepare to sign off, is the things, that's just the tools that, at least that I've talked about tonight, that I've thought about for this whole thing, is become aware of which part of you it is that's afraid of that rejection. Okay. Talk to that part, honor that part, but then call on the other parts of you that are not afraid of rejection to handle a situation where rejection is a potential. Okay. Whether it's love or whether it's a career thing, be mindful of not handing over the power to determine how you feel and your self-worth to somebody else. Okay. The second agreement can also be helpful with that. Don't take anything personally. And if you have not already read the 4 agreements, I do highly recommend them. So don't take it personally. Don't give them the power to determine how you feel about yourself, which would be ridiculous, because if you think about all the great things people have accomplished, it's usually been through a long line or barrage of rejection, right? So people don't, like, all the great works of art, all great films, great books, you know how many times like those were rejected? Some idiot was like to Herman Melville, like, no, we don't want a book about a fish. You know what I mean? Like, okay, duh, you shouldn't have passed on that. Or like Rent, the play Rent. I mean, how long did that guy work his ass off to try to get that play out there? Now everybody's, oh, Rent, well, we're Rent. Everybody loves Rent. So the fact that 1, 2, or 100 people say no doesn't really determine the worth of your work or view. And what are you saying, Maxine? Where do I find the 4 agreements? You can get it on Amazon or any bookstore. The author is Miguel Ruiz. So if you just look for the last name, Ruiz, and Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 agreements, and there's a subtitle. I think it's an ancient book of Toltec wisdom. I might have moved the words around a little bit, but it's pretty easy to find. And I have a lesson on it too, Max, if you want a little primer on it. What was I saying? Okay, so the calling on that second agreement of don't take anything personally, always doing your best, just leaving the rest. So I've done my level best, and your best is going to change from day to day, by the way. Got to mention that. Being impeccable with your word, only use your word in the service of uplifting, and that includes for yourself. So don't denigrate. And remember that your ego is not your amigo. And also make a decision about, are you willing to not live your vision of success because of a fear of something that's ultimately not real, because it doesn't actually have anything to do with you. If I have forgotten anything, you can rewind this and watch it again. I do want to thank you all for showing up tonight and participating. And please come back again next Wednesday. Tell your friends. We will be here. This will be the last installment next Wednesday at 7:30. The last installment of the Trials and Tribulations and Triumphs of the Heroine's Quest. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. Again, please share this if you would like to. And next week, I think what I'm going to do is have a giveaway, sort of a celebration of the last installment. And just because it's fun, I couldn't get it together this week to do it. I've been ripping and running a little bit too much. That's all I can think of that I've said. I'll put links below. And again, thank you guys for showing up. And I will see you next Wednesday at 7:30. Okay.